Paces drop for another round of soccer down here. It's a Friday, which means it's a Freestyle Friday to get you ready for the last competitive weekend before everybody's off and running to the World Cup. And John here, Jarrett there. There was a women's national match last night. We had a lot of different things to kind of prepare us for this morning. Teams are still being announced on an international scale. And we've got gossip, rumor, and innuendo. And we'll see where the show continues to roll on a Friday coming up in just a little bit. Jared, I guess for opening kickoff this morning, and I guess that means I need to bring up the QR code right there. Brought to us by our friends at Kickoff Coffee, kickoffcoffeeco.com, as I always point in the wrong direction. There it is. Once again, use the code SoccerDownHere15 with our friends at Kickoff Coffee, Kickoff Coffee CO on Facebook, on Instagram, and on Twitter. And they, in turn, take 10% of the proceeds and roll it over into youth initiatives. Very, very cool stuff from our friends at Kickoff Coffee, kickoffcoffeeco.com. Jarrett, USA and Germany played last night on the women's side. And I want to ask you this. Germany snaps the U.S.'s 71 home game unbeaten string with a 2-1 win down at DRVP&K. How concerned are you about the women's national team right now? Obviously, you're not too concerned. Go back to where you were standing before the show started. But wanted to just get into the details of that. You've got Alex Morgan, Megan Rapinoe, they combined for an equalizer in the 85th when they were down 1-0. Then 4 minutes later, Paulina Kronbeagle scores. And,
Yeah. So, not great. I mean, you're the top dog losing 3 in a row and then losing that one at home late. Just, I'd love to get everyone's opinion on it. Guys, people like Bart, who pays attention to it, and even people who watch it casually and people who watch it seriously and get an idea, because it just kind of feels listless at times. And some of that might just have to do with the fact that, the women's national team plays so many of these friendlies, and we're just so used to it just being basically,
boat race central.
Yeah, and just being an afterthought.
Yeah.
And it's not right now. And it's not great. And you've got a World Cup coming up next year, and how confident do you feel about it all? Man, it's just
yeah.
It just feels listless. We're just kind of floating in the ocean, and there's not a breeze for the sail to catch.
Yeah. Oh, and thank you, Abby. Good morning. I don't know, and this has been the biggest thing that has always been in not just my brain or yours, but I think in a lot of folks, is it's the transition from the years and years of dominance with those players who are now in their 30s and trying to transition to the younger talent that we know is there. It's always been the difficult push and pull, yin and yang of whomever was in charge. How much longer do we keep the veterans around? Because we know that we've had success with those veterans around. Do we let them call their own shot? Do we sit there and it's like, okay, we have younger talent. They need their turn. Can you pull back from what you've been able to do for the last 15, 16 years or so? That always, to me, has been the push and pull in all of this. And I don't know if there's a good answer other than, it's like, okay, it's time. But that's never really a good answer. And that to me has always been the issue with the women's national team. It's like, okay, when do we bring in the younger talent, let them get more minutes, let them learn the relationships that they need with one another, and let the veterans that have taken the sport on the back of the jersey and just, made sure that the U.S. was the dominant force in women's soccer. That balance to me has always been the issue. And sometimes you see it more than others that it is the issue in trying to bring in that and integrating that younger talent that we know is there.
And see, I'm fascinated to know, how much of this is just the world catching up with you, your talent's getting older, that sort of thing.
I think it's choice too, all the above.
because is it a matter of timing? Like Jill Ellis had the last, the dying embers of that generation,
Yeah.
got them through a World Cup, got them through a win, and now you're trying to kind of shift things a bit with the newer generation, and the people who were in that last generation aren't the same players they were because Father Time is undefeated.
Yes.
So I'm wondering if Ellis would have had the same issues that you're seeing right now with Vlatko.
Yeah. Abby is in this morning, and by her own admission, she didn't watch the entire game, but what she did watch, their passing sucked. I don't have the passing numbers here in front of me, but here's your lineup. It was Casey Murphy in net, defenders Emily Fox, Naomi Girma, Alana Cook, Sofia Huerta, and our friends at Soccer America were none too kind to the back line. A 4 for Girma, 3s for Cook and Huerta. Midfield, Rose Lavelle got a 6. Andy Sullivan got a 4. Lindsey Horan got a 5. Midfielders as a trio. This is their observation. Starting midfield seemed surprised when the Germans surged in the second half and the U.S. lost the grasp on the game it enjoyed in the first half. Early on, Lavelle was involved in most of the USA's promising forward progress, but faded before being subbed in the 63rd. Horan's day was marked by misses and misfortune, headed wide from 6 from the same distance, saw her shot deflected onto the crossbar. 43rd minute, blasted a 20-yard free kick into the wall, deserved a PK call when clearly tripped by Alexandra Pop. Horan unleashed a scissors kick off a corner, 14 yards, hit the post. Of all the things, the German counterattack that created the 1-0, Sullivan failed to prevent Buell's shot that ended up in the net via Murphy. Your forwards, Sophia Smith a 5, Alex Morgan a 6, Mallory Pugh a 5. Subs, Crystal Dunn misplayed a pass while the USA was attacking. Touch didn't improve. Twice in the U.S. penalty area. Clearance attempt gave the ball back to the Germans. She got a 3. Taylor Korniak, Sam Coffey, Trinity Rodman with 5s. Megan Rapinoe got a 6. So, it sounds like at times the U.S. was right there. They had the opportunities and just didn't get it into the back of the net. So, and I know that Bernd yesterday was saying that the lineup for the German side was going to be rotated around a little bit, just trying to get some reps and everything. So, it sounds like, and like I said, full disclosure, I did not watch the match last night. I kind of paid attention to it, but I was keeping an eye on other things. But it seemed like there were opportunities that for a post or a, one reason or another, something was happening. And so Abby was backline was consistently beat. And then Rack, and I think that Rack is probably on to the point that you and I were getting on to earlier. Rack hates it that it seems like we're just going to destroy the legacy of the group by having too many hang on too long and not making enough space for the next gen to get their kicks. And I think that's the point, Rack, that we were trying to make early on about all this, is that delicate balance of trying to figure out the when. And sometimes, and we always sit there and say, you want to leave the party, you always want to leave the party too soon. You don't want to be the last one there. And that kind of, in certain situations, seems like where we are with whoever's in charge with the women's national team. It's like you're trying to figure out, okay, what do we do? Do you do this? Do you do this? And it ends up, in the grand scheme of things, this was a result that you needed to learn things from if you're Vlatko Andonovski. And the biggest thing is I just would like to know what he learned.
Learned his backline as it sits. The people in his backline didn't perform well. Learned that you're not good enough to make mistakes like that. You're not good enough to have things go against you. Didn't create enough to have those things go against you and still be successful.
Yeah,
it'd be one thing. Like I've maintained that the ideal way to deal with this, to Rack's point, would be to use these friendlies, and there's this hard balance to strike here, to use these friendlies to bring in younger players, to bring in the next generation, build cohesion with them, and give them the opportunity to go out there and play successfully and build up to being ready for the big stage when the big stage comes, which is next year. one downside of that being that if you don't get everyone ready when the time comes, then they're frankly not ready. The other side of that coin is, even though you want to get people ready, when you do these tours around with the women's national team, people don't come out to see the next generation. They want to come out and see whatever's left of, the Megan Rapinos of the world, Tobin Heath, if she's able to give you anything, Julie Ertz, if she's with the team and able to give you anything. Like, they want to see the established stars. They're not really, it's harder to sell them on, hey, come out and see the stars of tomorrow.
Yeah.
Because that's how they've always done things. This is a steamrolling tour traditionally.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it is.
And when it's not steamrolling, then people, I think, don't know how to react, honestly.
Yeah.
They're just kind of like, well, damn.
Yes, exactly. Rack, when are we going to start seriously focusing on the 2023 World Cup and how we realistically maintain the gold standard legacy of U.S. women's soccer? I don't see what he learned other than he needs to be finding new pieces for sure. And then Abby need more speed on defense if they're playing how they want to, if they want to play up. In post-game analysis, Sophie Lawson over at the Four Letter said that on another day, it's easy to image the U.S. winning when presented with the same opportunities as Thursday night. Yet the lesson here is to take those chances when they're presented, not just against other teams in the top five. Germany currently ranked third in the world, but with nations around the world improving all the time. Lawson also mentions the defensive issues needing to be addressed. And both defenses looked less comfortable when the ball was sent into a corridor of uncertainty, rather converting the 6-yard box into a zone of panic. For an experimental German team, not overly surprising, they might look vulnerable at the back when overloaded by the women's national team, meaning the U.S. Yet the U.S. should also be concerned. While attempting to firm up their back line during the first 15, the Germans were able to get the ball over the top. For the rest of the first half, U.S. negated this by not allowing Germany to progress the ball into dangerous positions. But as soon as the Germans began to find transition, U.S. again began to look fragile at the back and is short on ideas when overloaded in the box. Concern 3 from Lawson. Is Vlatko any closer to the women's national team's World Cup lineup? Strong performance in the loss against England. Sophia Smith looked to have locked down her place, but her substandard performance against Germany has maybe forced Andonovski to reevaluate and write her name in pencil rather than permanent marker. Wider problem for the coach might not be the individuals chosen, but the group he picks to start. Balance off with Morgan, Pugh, and Smith on the pitch together, but with questions over his favorite formation still lingering. The jigsaw is a long way from looking more like than a collection of shapes.
So yeah, I don't know what the step is next. And you might be looking at this the same way we look at the men's teams, in the sense that after this World Cup cycle, it's Vlatko out.
Yeah.
Not necessarily because he might fail and fall on his face, but you've gone through a cycle with him. Women's soccer being in the flux that it is because of the decisions of terrible human beings, but do you make the change for the same reason we talk about on the men's side, which is to get a fresh set of eyes and a fresh perspective in there? And do you make that change? Even, because God only knows this might get worse before it gets better for them. The rest of the world, we've talked about, but for a long time, the rest of the world catching up with women.
Yeah.
To the point that, they played really damn well. The rest of the world did against them in the last World Cup. And the U.S. got through England being unable to convert penalties, France being unable to put chances away, and honestly, being ready for the moment and having that mentality of they've been in the trench before, whereas other teams had not necessarily been in the trench. But yeah, I mean, it's no matter how it ends, whether he's able to brute force his way through to a really good showing in a World Cup or not.
Yeah.
Given the way it's been looking and the way it's been developing, you just go get a fresh set of eyes. You get a fresh set of eyes for the next cycle anyway. You're not going to make the change now unless something weird happens.
Mm-hmm.
But you play out this cycle, you see what you learn from it, and after the World Cup, would not be surprised if you just make changes, get a fresh set of eyes on it, and get fresh development in, because something's not working.
No. Nix says it's unprecedented for the WNT. Awful defending. You can't seem to score. Got to get Vlatko out sooner rather than later, but I don't think you can do that leading into a World Cup cycle. I think Nix, that this is probably it for Vlatko, regardless of result. I think if you win, you go out on top, you move on to your next challenge. I think that if you don't win, you go out on top, you go out as you did. And, this is your last one, because, I mean, Jarrett, we talked about this before, that it's rare that you should probably hang on to a coach for more than one cycle.
Yeah. Didn't love it, honestly, when you held on to Joe Ellis for an extra cycle. It worked.
Right. Yeah.
I didn't think they would win that World Cup. I was pretty vocal about that.
Mm-hmm.
They did it. They gritted through it, and it's a really good and it's a really good win, and should absolutely hang their hat on that. She should hang her hat on it. She got stuff right.
Yeah.
But yeah, there's no reason to do it for more than one cycle, and in this case, yeah, there's no reason to do it, in my opinion. Again, like, there's to everybody's point. To Rack's point, I've seen nothing from Vlatko that tells me he is seriously finding an answer for you just can't win on more talent alone anymore, which is the reality where we are. Yeah, I mean, that is where we're at. Like, the rest of the world has caught up. The rest of the world has done the investment. The rest of the world has not only done the investment in raw talent, but in coaching and technical play and in athleticism. And they're catching up to having caught up with you.
Yeah.
And it's not just, like the Brazil of the world or Germany. It's not just like one or two countries. It is the rest of the world, like, willing to go toe-to-toe with you, which is it's not damning in the sense. Okay, I don't want to say it's damning because I don't want to discount or dismiss anything the rest of the world is doing. I'm very glad the rest of the world is catching up, and it is their work more so than the United States' work slowing down. It's their work picking up. That is great. The U.S. not reacting in kind and picking up even more, or not being efficient and effective in the ways they want to make changes, that is the damning part.
Yeah.
Good on the rest of the world for catching up and putting them, under pressure.
Well, once again, that speaks to the growth of the game. And it's not just one of those where you sit there and you go, all right, so, okay, the U.S. is the best, then, there's nothing that we can do about it. The margins have closed.
You know what's going to happen, Jason, is their first game is going to be against, it's going to be like the Thailand game. Maybe not to that extent. But their first game, or one of their group games, they're going to have somebody in their group who is basically just Bantha fodder and will just get pummeled by the U.S., and I'm sure we'll hear about that. Okay, we overreacted. It's fine. Everything's good. Everyone remain calm. And that's
stay calm all. Stay calm all as well. Yeah.
I mean, but they have. He's right. I mean, Jason's right. They have regressed. Mm-hmm. They still have players who have talent, but those players are older now, and where you've made changes, it hasn't meshed. We talked about this with Bart about Julie Ertz. Like, you don't really have another Julie Ertz.
No.
And not just like for what Julie Ertz gave you, being able to switch back and forth and play all over God's creation.
Mm-hmm.
But, that leadership, that calming influence, like, you don't have that. That sucks. That's not to say that other players are bad or can't do the job. It's just what you're looking at right now.
Yeah. And if Bart can swing it, I have exercised the golden ticket. So if Bart can come on later today, I don't know what his regular real world schedule is today. But if he can swing it after 10 o'clock, I have extended the golden ticket to Bart Keeler to come in and discuss what happened last night with the WNT. And, Rack is absolutely on a roll this morning. And going back in order, sure, you kept Rapinoe for that. How many seat fillers? Also, they weren't stars right away. If Ellis doesn't make room, even if you hate her, you don't see new stars rise. I sometimes wonder if Vlatko Andonovski actually watches the NWSL.
Well, this is an issue we've had. This is an issue I've had with the national team going back years. Is that I felt like the national team was just kind of like they once you got into the national team pool,
Yeah.
you were in like Flynn, and that was great.
Mm-hmm.
But I have felt for a while that if you weren't in, if you didn't make your way in at the right time, it was tough to break in. Um, we've seen a number of players where we're like, you're begging for them to break through and to be not necessarily don't even have to be stars on the national team, but but players who can come in and contribute.
Mm-hmm.
And it has always felt like an old girls club with
Yeah, it did.
getting players from the league itself, maybe who took a non-traditional route. We've seen this with the men's national team with players in the past who have forced their way into the conversations at times. Even for a spell, when it was Chris Mueller coming up out of Orlando, who was a draft pick, or Daryl Dike when he was coming up, Miles Robinson, who wasn't necessarily marked as a 17-year-old kid who was expected to be an anchor on the back line of the national team in 4 years, 5 years kind of thing, but able to force their way into that picture. I feel like it's been tougher on the women's side to get those players to break through the wall with the national team, and that sucks because there are surely players there that would help them. There have to be, because of what you're looking at on the field. There's got to be somebody.
Yeah, and that's the thing. It's like it's you feel like you're rolling the dice perpetually.
Rack's right. You don't just replace Ertz. Like,
no.
An entire conversation about like Julie Ertz being is going to go down as one of like one of the best, I think, in what she did, but still somehow underappreciated.
Yeah. No question.
Because of the intangibles.
Yeah. And we've seen it from her. And once again, this is a question to the floor. I'll put this as a question to the floor. Who, either that is a part of the roster now or a part of the discussion now, or someone that folks watch, do you think could be the next individual that's in that role? Who can take over? Who can be the next Julie Ertz without it being Julie Ertz, I guess is the question. And so that to me is who's the next individual that you can put into that discussion and sit there and have her as that centerpiece that that you can rely on to do what Julie Ertz does. That's the question.
Yeah. I don't know the answers.
Right, and that's why I wanted to put it to the floor. And before I forget that I put this question to the floor, I'm going to write it down so I don't forget. Who is the next, in quotation marks, Julie Ertz? And so, and with that note, Rack says Big Holes to Fill doesn't seem to have an answer for Ertz and for Sauerbrunn. Frankly, either. The back line is exposed. He continues, I've seen nothing from Vlatko that tells me he's really serious finding an answer for, quote, you just can't win on more talent alone anymore, which is the reality of where we are. And we'll ask about generational shifts coming up in just a little bit. So, Jarrett, come back at 10 o'clock.
Sounds good.
All right. So we're in a large discussion this morning about national teams. And I want to bring in this guy to talk about national teams. Cap, what's the word?
Morning, John.
Yes, it is morning. I will grant you that.
Yes, sir. Everything's good on my end. How about yourself?
Oh, trying to look the part. So as I sit here and filibuster and let everybody know that you're hanging out with me.
Yes.
We had an announcement yesterday. Was it yesterday? 2 days ago?
Yeah, 2 days ago.
Okay, I mean, because it all just blends together. What's it like when you get tapped on the shoulder for any competition? I know for you it was 2 gold cups, and you were on a preliminary roster. I think it was for 14?
Yeah.
What's it like to get tapped on the shoulder to sit there and say, "Hey, I want you to represent your country"? What's that moment like?
Man, there's not many better feelings for a soccer player, I wouldn't think. It's first, it's a relief, a big relief, because obviously it's not an unexpected call that you're receiving. You know that you're going to be getting a call or an email or something, and that you've got a good chance of making it. So it's a huge relief, and it just validates, I guess, all the hard work that you've done to get to where you are, right? All the grind that we talk about, and the sacrifice, right? Of course, you bear those fruits with your club team, and doing well with them, for sure. But any player's ultimate goal is to represent their national team, and then to do that at the biggest stages.
So when you look at where the United States has come from, both on the men's and women's side, what's it been like for you to see the growth of the game to where it is, and your place in it as a professional footballer and someone who's represented your country, and now someone who gets to influence those next generations? What's it been like for you to see the game grow here in the U.S., to see U.S.'s place in it?
Yeah, it's been awesome. I mean, I think people don't realize how far we've come as a country in such short little time. When I turned pro in 2005, there were no MLS academies. That didn't exist. Right, the only pathway was basically going to college, or if you could turn pro straight from high school, which was very rare at that time. So the ample opportunities that are out there now, especially with USL growing, so many opportunities for players, which is awesome, on the men's and the women's side, which wasn't there even 10 years ago.
Yeah.
So, I know people want us to compete for World Cups titles and, be there at the very top, but soccer in this country is still so young compared to these, European, African, Asian countries that have been doing it for decades. We're still in catch-up mode. And yes, we've got every advantage as far as athletic people, every resource possible out there, facilities. So yes, we will catch up at some point quickly. We already are, with MLS being definitely a top 7 league in the world. So it's been incredible to see, honestly. I'm fortunate to be a part of it.
When you get to kind of see what's been going on, and you're having conversations now, I know that giving advice earlier in your career to younger folks, the message might be different now than it was that previous generation. How has giving advice to younger soccer players changed, or has it, with the growth of the game here in the United States? Has the messaging been different? What's the levels of acceptance, all those kinds of things? How has mentoring even changed in that time frame where the game has grown to where it is?
Yeah, I mean, I would assume it's changed. I mean, I didn't really have a per se mentor when I was younger, and Greg and I have only been doing this for a little over a year. But I would assume the conversations are a lot different, because kids these days at 10, 11, 12 are in such a different position than I was, and most of my generation was at that age, as far as they're so far ahead of where we were. They've got such better coaching. They're watching their games on video. There's so many opportunities for them to play year round if they want. And so the level is different. And they've also got aspirations. When I was 10 years old, there was no MLS. I was looking at, like, man, if I want to play pro, then I'm gonna have to go to Europe, and shoot, maybe I'd rather play baseball, type thing. Where it's like, now, these guys, some of them are training at the same facility as professional soccer players, right? It's just so different to have that type of motivation right in front of you, and idols that you can, look up to and try and emulate your game around, including soccer on TV, right? I'm sure when you're growing up, There was barely
In the
any
case
soccer
of
on
black and
TV.
white television, yeah.
Exactly. I mean, even when I was growing up, I mean, you get a Champions League game every now and then,
Yeah.
right? But other than that, you weren't seeing much soccer on TV, and that's a huge learning tool. So yeah, I think the conversations are much different because these athletes have they're just at a different level earlier on, and so they understand different aspects, and you can get into greater depth about the sacrifices and what you need to do. And I preface that with saying, like, hey, the younger the age, for sure, the more we try and tell kids, hey, be a kid, play other sports, do other things, have other hobbies as well.
But how difficult is that, though? Because of how things are today, whether it's parental expectations or self-expectations and how kids are, how difficult is it for a kid to be a kid, considering aspirations and goals and things like that?
Very, very difficult. I know it from firsthand experience because my son, when we were in Atlanta, played NASA soccer for their I don't know, U8, U9 academy team, right? So it's just a step up from rec league. But he also played baseball, and baseball was, I call it rec, but rec at East Cobb baseball is not rec, right? It's definitely way more intense than rec. But he and we had a very difficult time juggling both sports, and he was 8 years old, right? At a time when he should be playing multiple sports for sure. And having that opportunity, it was difficult for us, right? We were running from one to the other sometimes. We had to make decisions of, which one don't we go to this time? And coaches, some of them try to say, hey, yeah, we encourage you guys to play sports, but then they're not too happy when you don't show up for a game or you don't show up for a practice. And that's the reality of it. And that's at 8 and 9. So yeah, it's even tougher at 10, at 11, right? To play these other sports and get these different experiences. So, I encourage it, but I totally understand as a parent that it's really, really difficult and costly.
And since you get to see it both ways, I mean, I think that both as a parent and as a mentor, you get to see how difficult it is. I mean, then as someone who, I don't have kids like you. I have parents and pets. That's what I have when it comes to overseeing things. But when it comes to that kind of messaging, and it's like, be a kid, be a kid, be a kid. When I was a kid, since we didn't have all of that other sensory stuff around us, I imagine it was probably a little easier than, having to do cutthroat things and having disappointment thrown at you from other adults for things that are out of your control. I mean, it just seems generationally, if I could get my upper plate to work this morning, that the pressures on younger players and younger athletes and just young people in general. It's something that really, I think that they have to grow up faster these days than they did probably when you were younger, and definitely when I was younger.
Totally. And it's society. We're forcing our kids to grow up faster because, obviously there's totally different ways of parenting, but, the way that we have chosen to parent is to be upfront and honest with our kids. And so, you have some tougher conversations with them when they're at a younger age to prepare them and to protect them in the long run. And that's difficult for sure. But yeah, on the sporting side, absolutely. I always think like you get these, sometimes you get athletes that are called practice players, right?
Yeah.
That do really well at practice. And then they get to the games and they struggle or they're nervous or something. And if I had one of those kids, if I was the parent of one of those kids, I'd look at myself in the mirror because usually at practice, parents are not yelling. They're sometimes not there, right? The kids just get to go out there. They're with the coach. And they're just practicing, having fun, right? But come game time, all the parents are lined up on the sideline. And, are you adding, or are the parents adding pressure and criticism to kids playing? And is that affecting their desire to go out there and their ability to do well when they are out there? So, there's that as well that kids are dealing with.
Do you ever get to have conversations with peers in an age sense and kind of break it down, where you get to be a mentor and you get to see young athletes want to do what they want to do. Do you ever have to have those hard conversations with parents or adults or those who are in that sphere of that particular athlete if things are kind of being a little too intense? Do you ever have to have those conversations?
Every now and then, and we try and toe a line of, suggesting, and, we're not at these kids' games, so we don't know exactly, but, that's where the group sessions come in handy, because when we do group sessions, we definitely encourage parents to be there. And for sure, some of the messaging goes towards them as well. Because obviously everyone knows it's the worst part about youth sports, right? Everyone knows that, right? Everyone that's been a part of the game, yet it just seems to be concurrent, right? I saw it when I was a kid growing up. There were parents there. When I was at my kids' games in East Cobb, like, it was just ridiculous, right? And most of the time, if you ever see a pro athlete, where they're watching their kid, they're going to be the one in the corner.
Yeah.
Like away from all the other parents, just sitting there with a hoodie on, hanging out, being quiet, right? Because they know. Yes, every now and then, I see LeBron James out there, and he's loud and boisterous at his kids' game. But I'd say for the most part, they're off in a corner being quiet, because I think most of us are appreciative of the parents that are like that.
So when a mentee posts on social media, and this is stuff that you guys at BG Mentoring do on your social media accounts. When one of your mentees has a message that is posted on social media about the positive experience that he has with you guys and how it rubs off and how he grows, what's that like for you and for Greg to see those kinds of things come to the fore, to where you have a physical representation of what you're trying to talk about?
Yeah, it feels great. It feels great that the work that we're doing makes a difference, right? They're getting it, they're understanding it, but also that they understand that they needed it, and that's some of it too. Sometimes you get the kids whose parents sign them up, whose parents know that they need it or need something, but the kid doesn't necessarily. And so it's always great to get those messages, and that's. We don't do it for the messages, but we do it for the feeling that the kid gets that, okay, there's progress being made here. I'm being more confident. I'm understanding how to deal with some setbacks or whatever is going on. So yeah, definitely rewarding. It feels good.
Is there one element or issue that you find that you and Greg find the hardest to tackle when it comes to your mentees these days? Or is it just you start off with this universal approach and then you kind of take case by case with each? But is there any kind of commonality as to some of the harder things these days?
Yeah, it's a good question. I think that dealing with confidence is obviously one that we get a lot. And there's certain things that we try and help with on the mental side, so that you don't lose it, or that you don't lose it too far. Lose all of it when you do go through a bad spout, and then certain little things that can help out. But there's some kids that are already in a bad place confidence wise, and so trying to get them out. And a lot of that is getting to know the kid. Mm-hmm. And what they're going through and their situation and why they're down, because it's not a, hey, do this and you'll be good. It's not a white blanket fixes everything for everyone. So that's the challenge for us sometimes is getting a relationship with the kid so that we can understand how we can help and what message will best serve them, right? Because everyone's different and everyone reacts to things differently. And so, when the blanket approach isn't working, and some of the tools that we try and give aren't getting through to an individual. It's that challenge sometimes, especially some kids who are quiet, getting them to open up and seeing how we can best help them.
Yeah, but
comments on the side, John. I just want to mention that the lollipop is a good idea. I've heard that before about that was on the sidelines, and the initiative right now is 95% in Atlanta. We want to bring it elsewhere, and it's available elsewhere because we do most of it virtually anyways. So it's available for anybody. I'm at 10 o'clock, I'm speaking with a kid that's at Yale. And later on, we've got kids that are in New York City, Portland, all over the place. So, it's available everywhere. I'd like to do more up here in Ohio at some point. But we're trying to get our footing on the ground there in Atlanta first.
How different is it to do mentoring digitally versus in person?
I think like everything, you can usually connect a little bit better in person. You can get a better vibe with people, but I mean, it's similar to the workforce, right? It's nice to have the option. It's nice to have the availability, and you're able to reach a wider audience that we wouldn't normally. I think that there's some downsides to, where some kids, don't have great internet connection. That can be a struggle. So Greg and I are hopefully with our nonprofit going to help address some of that with kids that we work with that don't have good internet. But I'd say it's mostly it's better. We can. I'm up here in Ohio, so right. If everything was in person, I wouldn't be connecting with as many kids as I'm able to.
Yeah, when you mention how technology helps in this kind of a thing, I think that over the last couple of seasons and the last couple of years, we've really learned how to be more nimble when it comes to how we want to do things and how we want to make sure that folks know that we can still be engaged. Since you started this, since you and Greg started Beyond Goals, have you had to adjust your thought patterns about how you're addressing things when it comes to your path, whether it's digital versus in person? I guess when you looked at your expectations about how you wanted to give your messaging out from the beginning, has it changed? Has your approach changed since you started, even in this short period of time since it began?
We're definitely growing and adapting and using more tools. We understand sometimes when we're working with some younger athletes that we can, if we just sit there and talk for 30 minutes even, right, you lose the attention span.
Yeah. So
trying to make it a little bit more interactive, show some videos every now and then, us ask them more questions, get them more involved. So those are probably the biggest things we've learned of how to make it a little bit more interactive and less one-sided, us, giving information. Because even though it might be good, it means nothing if they've shut off after 7 minutes because they're bored. So that's been the biggest part. And I think that's a little easier when you're in person to grab somebody's attention, right? Than over the computer where, they can look out to their bedroom or wherever they are, or they can, who knows what else is going on the screen that we can't tell, so that's probably been the biggest thing. And that's why Greg and I, particularly in the group sessions, like to be there in person, because at least one of us, because we can grab their attention a little bit better and, call on kids and, like I said, make it more interactive.
All right. So Abby's got another question for you. You working with mostly boys, or is it a mix these days?
It's a mix. It's mostly boys, I would say, but it's a mix. We work with, on the group side, it's far more mixed. Anytime that we go to a high school, we try and talk to the boys and the girls teams. And that's usually the case. Definitely when we go to any after school program, it's a mix of kids. Our individual sessions, I'd say that it's probably 80-20 boys to girls. And, that's one thing that Greg and I have spoken about, that we'd like to expand at some point in the future and bring on either a current or former woman player, because I think that, especially this day and age, like, women can connect with girls better than a man can. I will say that Greg and I try, and when we do videos with girls, we try and find clips from U.S. women's national team's games and make it more relevant to them than watching, men play. But that's the reality of it right now, 80-20. And then the groups are definitely 60-40, 50-50.
I'm only going to keep you for another couple of minutes because you mentioned you got the session coming up at 10 o'clock. When it comes to young athletes and just young men and women when you're mentoring, I know that one of the things that when I will talk to an intern who is hanging out in a television station and they're completely intimidated by their surroundings and they see all of this TV stuff going on around them and that they want to learn, but they don't quite know how. And I will always go to an intern and I will say, look, there is no such thing as a wrong question to ask, because I've heard it before. You won't be the last person to ask it. So don't ever be afraid to ask a question. If you think it might be a bad question to ask, don't worry about it. Do you have those same kind of concerns with your mentees when they're almost afraid to ask because they don't want everyone around them to think that it's a question that shouldn't be asked? And it's like, oh, why are you asking that? Do you have those mentees with those concerns?
Yeah, totally. I think that we get it in the individual session because sometimes kids are a little starstruck or, intimidated a little bit talking to an ex-professional. But for sure in the group stage, when you've got that pressure of, is my buddy over there going to give me a hard time for asking a silly question, what they think is a silly question or whatever. So no, we definitely encourage it. Sometimes we tell kids, hey, your homework is to come next session with 3 questions for us. In the group stage, we try and lean on the coach or the leader there to help us call on certain kids that say, hey, ask a question, or we tell them beforehand, think of some questions that you want to ask. Because you're right, it's always better when they're asking questions and we're able to answer things and go from there. Makes it more interactive, like I said, and more helpful, right? I know that they have questions, and you're right, it's just the confidence of being able to ask it.
All right. So what's going on with Beyond Goals? Because I know I have a follow-up after this. What's the latest? What's on the timetable for you and Greg these days?
Tomorrow we have an event with Soccer in the Streets. Their annual gala downtown is tomorrow. So I'm flying down tomorrow for that. So Greg and I will be there. And, I think that the newest thing is Greg and I messing around with YouTube, and we are going to start getting some YouTube clips up of little parts of some of the messaging that we give, so that it's available and it's out there, but then also maybe interview other athletes and ask them some little questions and, small little clips that could be helpful, that can just be out there to reach a bigger audience.
And so then are you flying to Rhode Island for the announcement at the Guild RI, at the Guild RI on the Twitters? So you're going from Soccer in the Streets to Rhode Island for the announcement on Monday, right?
Correct. So, yep, down in Atlanta tomorrow for Soccer in the Streets Saturday, Sunday flying to Rhode Island. The big name and crest reveal Monday and Tuesday up in Rhode Island. So super excited about that. It's been a while coming. It's going to be awesome.
All right, and so if you want to break some news before you go, you can.
I might be in a little bit of trouble if I do that.
Look, it's just us, dude. It's just us.
I know, and Abby.
And then it goes to the app and the podcatchers afterward. One last question from Abby. Do you guys work with coaches to help them in how they coach?
That's a great question, and it's something that Greg and I have thought about, incorporating it into our business or whatever you want to call it.
Your operating model, I guess.
Exactly, because we know that coaches have some of the biggest influence over kids, more so than parents and sometimes more so than teachers. So to get them to understand that and to give them tips of seeing kids that are dealing with confidence issues or pressure and how to encourage versus criticize, and little things that we learned just from other coaches. And sometimes, especially at the rec level, right? These coaches are just volunteers, dads that got roped into it that have no idea and things like that. But even them at a young age, they've got a big influence. You know, I think I've probably said it on here before, but Arsene Wenger's quote of it's better to have no coach than a bad coach under the age of 12. And yeah, I agree with it, because a coach can kill the fun and can kill the confidence of a young player, and then they'll never go back to the game, which is sad. So we have thought about it, or even partnering with another group to create something. So it's definitely in the pipeline somewhere.
It's better to have no coach than a bad coach.
Something like that. But I'm looking forward to the World Cup as well. We got that starting soon.
Yeah, we do. And we'll talk about that next time you're on. So you got a session. Get out of here.
Yeah. Thank you. Appreciate it. You have a great weekend.
You too. Be good. Michael Parkhurst, BG Mentoring. And so he's going to go be a mentor. And great questions, guys. Thanks for doing that this morning. Let's see. Since it is close to the top of the hour, I'm going to go ahead and do this. We might have the forbidden door open at 10 o'clock. So we'll see what happens there. And so once again, what did we say? 20 for the music, so it doesn't completely and totally distort. Okay, I've got it at 19. Time for the promo. For odor-free, clean, fresh air, one place you need to go. It's a Lemonize service. The Lemonize service deodorizes enclosed spaces like houses, apartments, and condos. They've created a customized solution that eliminizes all organic odors, including those like pets, cigarettes, and food. Realtors and property managers use the Lemonize service to eliminate bad odors to help them sell or rent their homes that much faster. It's a turnkey process. Makes it easy to work with said realtors and property managers. Kind to the environment. We like that these days. A very green way to get rid of odors without any kind of toxic residue whatsoever. Different than Febreze or our favorite masking agents that we have either under the sink or above us in the cupboard, because when you reach under the sink or above you in the cupboard, pull out the masking agent, spray it in the air. There's a reason they call it a masking agent, because that's all it does. It masks the odor. Does not attack it all the way down to the molecule like our friends at Lemonize do with their proven scientific formula. Pricing very, very easy, one of two ways, either cubic feet or parts per million, to come up with a price that is affordable for you, offering results in 24 hours or less. How do you reach out to them, you ask? Well, I'll tell you. QR code for those of you watching over my left shoulder on Twitch, or go to the website, lemonize.com. But do us a favor here at SDH. After the .com, go /Atlanta, so they know what part of the world that you are reaching out to them from, so that they can help you with your issues, your full homework assignment. ELIMINIZE.com /Atlanta, lemonize.com /Atlanta for odor-free, clean, fresh air. Lemonize service, proud sponsors of everything SDH. So there you go. Usually the promo read comes in about a minute and a half. Knock out the loop function. Kill the music, and we're back at it. Okay. Once again, guys, thanks for all the questions for Parky this morning. It's very, very cool. At MF Parkhurst and at BG Mentoring on the Twitters, so you can follow along with what's going on in Rhode Island. It is at RI_Pro Soccer. At RI_Pro Soccer. Name and crest reveal coming up on Monday after he and Greg are at the Soccer in the Streets Gala this weekend. So busy weekend for Cap as he comes from Ohio down to Atlanta up to Rhode Island, has issues taken care of with all of the public there in Rhode Island. So new stuff going on, USL Championship for USL Rhode Island on Monday. So looking forward to that. And, I tried to get him to break some news, but unfortunately he did not want to do that. And so we will discuss that with him next time around. And we're going to continue our discussion on the women's national team and what concerns you guys have. Let me go back in the timeline to Rack, since you were on fire this morning. There were a couple of things I don't think that we necessarily got the chance to talk about. Let's see. Yeah, Firpino is the only one still scoring in 2023. It's going to be ugly. Knicks. If the team without major changes will not medal this summer. Mark my words. All right, so that's happened. The words have been marked. 11, 11, 22. And if you add 11 and 11, you get 22. So 10:01 in the show. about 55 minutes in. Knicks, your words have been marked. Without major changes, the team will not medal. Yeah, and that's and Rack, you just don't replace Ertz. Question whether you have to find a new midfield system with the personnel change. Then what you're looking for from an Atlanta standpoint, the women's Darlington Nagby. And so look at this. Forbidden door is open. Bart Keeler crashes through the forbidden door on a Friday. And it was basically because sir, and if you were listening in the first half hour, we were having a discussion about the women's national team and what happened last night down at DRVP&K, where 71-match home win streak snapped.
Yeah.
And there were issues upon issues. So from 30,000 feet, sir, what did you think about what happened last night?
Well, first off, I don't believe that there are issues upon issues. I think there were a couple of issues. Individual errors caused goals. I do think there were some structural errors. There seemed to be too much space between our back line and our midfield.
Mm-hmm.
But I think that actually last night was a really good game. Lindsey Horan was about a total of 1 foot from having a hat trick.
Yes.
She hit the post twice and had a header that just somehow missed. And I think it's fair to say, yes, we need to have one of those goals has to go in, right? Like that's law of averages. You just assume that goes in, but it's unfortunate it hasn't. We had other people find opportunities. It wasn't like we were, in my opinion, from what I saw, it wasn't at all a game that Germany deserved to win, in my opinion. And in fact, I think that second goal comes from the US's desire to go get a second or go get a winner, because at that point they had just tied it. A very well worked goal. And again, it kind of, to me, brings up what I think is the highlight of this team is being able to press and work defensively high up the field and create transition moments. And we've seen that in a lot of the goal. I mean, the goal we scored against England is very similar. So I think personally, I continue to see that as the way forward, especially against better teams. Now, obviously, when you're playing in CONCACAF, that's not going to work because Jamaica, Costa Rica, like they're not going to be at that level to be able to possess the ball. But I think what we saw last night was actually a good example of how the U.S. can beat teams like Germany, England, and even Spain. The problem is just that we didn't have things go our way. Germany had a few good attacking moments. We had a few good attacking moments. Jason, I know you just absolutely despise Vlatko, so that's fine. But you're going to have to tell me how last night was an example of Vlatko out when we created opportunities, we created goal-scoring chances, we very much played well throughout the match. Unfortunately, balls did not go in the net. I jokingly tweeted out from the AO Atlanta account, the goal is lava. It just felt like there was zero ability for us to get the ball in the back of the net. Mm-hmm. Credit to Germany's goalkeeper who had a couple of good saves. But the first goal Germany scores is such an unlucky goal. I mean, you defended a counterattack fairly okay. You at least were able to not have them score on the initial attack. Unfortunately, the rebound comes out to a German defender. Andy Sullivan doesn't close down as tight as she needs to, that can be a topic of conversation next.
Go for
Just
it.
Close down as tight as she wanted to, or she should have. Germany gets a shot off and it comes off the post, hits Casey Murphy and goes into goal. The U.S. had multiple shots that hit the post as well, but somehow just didn't find their way into the back of the net, Yeah. And here's my general 3,000 foot or 30,000 foot view is this particular U.S. women's team. Mm-hmm. We can say, oh yes, they're very talented. I think that's a fair thing to say. But at the end of the day, maybe the team itself is not as good as Germany and England and teams like that. And you know what? That's okay. I know this is hard to have people realize, but we are talking about we're coming off a generation of players who made 3 World Cup finals in a row. We're also talking about a generation of players around the world, specifically in Europe, who have had the benefit of having their entire lives playing in footballing systems that are now trying to include them. That was the thing, is before this, the US system was the only one that really provided opportunities to girls to play soccer. And you know why that is? Title IX. A lot of other countries didn't have that. I mean, England literally banned women from playing soccer for half a century. Germany and all these other countries had similar laws on the books and certainly had, if not a law, just general understanding of, we're not allowing women to play soccer and we're not going to support it. Germany and some of the Scandinavian countries were a little bit better about it and quicker, but on the whole, these European countries, the FAs that have bukus, oodles, gagillions of monies, right, compared to what US soccer has, are able to fund better their women's teams. Now, is it perfect? No. I think if you ask any player on a women's team in Europe if they think it's an equitable situation, they would say no. But these FAs have the resources, have the infrastructure, and we've talked about this before, just the footballing infrastructure to kind of copy and paste and get women to start playing at a higher level. And the US, that's where the US hasn't adapted yet. So what we're seeing now is very talented girls playing soccer all up and down this roster. We have a very young roster. I mean, you're still looking at Amal Pugh, Sophia Smith, who are under the ages of 25, Andy Sullivan, Emily Fox. These are not old players. The veterans last night were Alex Morgan, Lavelle Horan. Those were your veterans, which they're great veterans, but you had three. You're looking at a back line that's never been a part of a major international tournament, any of them, except for Alana Cook, who made it to the Olympics last summer. But all the rest of them, brand new. Gurma, who is under the age of 23. Cook, Fox, Huerta, all new to this women's national team. So part of that is because of the injuries that we've had, right? Tierna Davidson, Abby Dalkemper, even to an extent Becky Sauerbrunn, who had an injury earlier this year, are not being able to be featured as much. You still have Kelly O'Hara, Emily Sonnet, who are out due to injury. Crystal Dunn, who was out because of pregnancy and is coming back and is in no way, shape, or form back to the level she needs to be playing international soccer. Sorry, people. That's just the facts. She's not there yet. You have a midfield trio that should be better that aren't, and that's where I think the Vlatko criticisms can very much lie, is why do we keep running out the same midfield when it hasn't produced the goals we need? But you look at last night and you go, well, they weren't not producing. And you had a front three of Alex Morgan, Sophia Smith, Mal Pugh, two of those very, very young. You don't have a Kristen Press. You don't have a Lynn Williams. Girls who were ready, especially a Lynn Williams, this was supposed to be a cycle she was really going to take off, right? So you're not even playing your best US team, right? You can talk about a mid Germany team. One, they're not mid. They finished second at the Euros. They're pretty darn good. But yeah, they weren't playing a full strength squad. Neither was the US. The US is not at full strength. And other countries have figured out how to develop players very well. There's a lot of panic, and it's not unjust, because obviously we've just lost 3 matches in a row. We just lost a match at home. We've given up multiple goals, 3 matches in a row. Like, those things are bad. But I think you're looking too much at what's happening here and not looking at the whole big picture and understanding that some of these things are not a Vlatko issue. They're not a Lindsey Horan not finding the right side of the post issue. There are systemic issues that US soccer has because US soccer doesn't have the resources or ability to overhaul the system right yet. You have NWSL teams that are, we have NWSL teams that need to develop academy systems similar to the European clubs. We have USL women's teams that need to develop academy systems. I look at places like Tormenta that have a men's and a women's team, an academy system that can start developing young girls to play at the professional level. We still have a women's college structure that is actually very good for developing players. And I still think that the college game is the US's secret ingredient to creating good players, because players who aren't ready at 18 get 4 more years to develop, and sometimes that helps, or they get 2 more years to develop in the case of like Naomi Gurma or Sophia Smith. So I think the issues we're having is that we want to blame everything on what's this moment, but the reality is the world is catching up. That's not a bad thing. And US soccer doesn't have the resources, or it really just doesn't have the resources to overhaul the system to match what the rest of the world can do right now. I'll also again say, if this team in 2023 doesn't win a World Cup, people are going to be very mad. And my response would be, right. I mean, look, the U.S. women's national team, your expectation is to win. I get this. But like the realistic expectation is you should be making the semifinals. You're still talented enough to do that. There's no reason to not to. You did it at the Olympics, even though you played poorly. Yes, I think that there are some issues with the way that Vlatko sets up his team, but I think overall we're just looking at a generation that is in so much transition that it's hard for me to look at them and go, wow, we got to change everything. There are a lot of changes we need to make, but like, I don't think swapping out Vlatko for another coach is going to fix those issues, right? Maybe another coach sees that Lavelle, Horan, Sullivan isn't your best midfield, but I would argue personally, I don't know of another player in the midfield who's better than Lavelle and Horan, who's healthy right now, because I think Katarina Macario might be that, but she's dealing with an ACL recovery. So there's a lot of thoughts, John, a lot of consternation, a lot of angst around this U.S. women's national team, and I think it's justified. Look, you lost 3 matches in a row. That's something that the U.S. doesn't do. But we have 9 months until a World Cup, and I am more willing to let Vlatko take us to the 2023 World Cup.
Yeah.
To get these players who are, again, very young, just get them the experience of playing at the international level. You know, that is something that is valuable right now. It's Sophia Smith, Mal Pugh, Emily Fox, Naomi Girma, Casey Murphy. These are players that hopefully, if we're hosting in 2027, can lead us to victory here on home soil.
Was this transition to the younger talent? Who's the mug this morning?
Atlanta United.
Okay, there we go.
And we got an Atlanta United Champions t-shirt as well. So
there you go. Was this transition to the younger generation a cycle too late in your mind because of how the world is closing on the United States? Because I know that you've got a lot of those 30-plussers that were still there last time out. Jill Ellis got it right. I mean, there's no question.
Yeah.
She got it right. Everybody was freaking out. Everybody was going, oh, I don't know. This team's too old. The world's closing down. Jill Ellis hit every note the right way. But is this transition to 23, did it start too late in your mind? Should it have started earlier where the 30-plussers were being worked their way out because of effectiveness or what have you? Did we start this too late in your mind?
Well, here's the catch-22 of that. The goal we scored last night was Alex Morgan to Megan Rapinoe.
Right.
You know, but to answer your question, yes, I think the transition did take too late. I think that, you know, most of the times when you watch the women's international football, you have your World Cup, and immediately after you have your Olympics, and usually the Olympics is like your last hurrah, thanks for everything, go home. The problem that I do think is you held on to that generation a year too long once you had the COVID. However, I understand that because you had a whole year lost due to COVID, it's not like you could go see new players. You had to deal with the players that you knew. And it was tough because I personally would have rather have said, look, Pino, Carly, Becky, all those players who have been very important throughout this run, thank y'all for your service.
Mm-hmm.
Y'all are fantastic. But this year delay, unfortunately, you know, it just isn't going to make we can't keep bringing you out here.
Right.
And I think if you would have brought a young U.S. women's national team, and not even that young, because I'm talking like Lynn Williams, like she's 30, but, you know, started bringing in this newer generation at the 2022-21 Olympics, you know, instead of saying, okay, we're going to bring the old hats again. I think if you would have brought the younger players to the tournament in 2021, once you had that year delay, we would have been a little bit ahead of schedule. But I'll again reiterate, we're not healthy. Because in that tournament, you still would have had Tierna Davidson, Abby Dalkemper.
Mm-hmm.
You still would have probably had a Katarina Macario who went to the Olympics.
Right.
You know, you hopefully would have had Mal Pugh, Sophia Smith, and probably Lynn Williams. Yes, you probably would have kept Morgan and Press, but, you know, would you have necessarily not brought Kelly O'Hara? You probably would have brought her. Alyssa Nair is still your number one. You know, there has to be a mix, but I do think that, yes, we probably should have started bringing in the new blood a little bit sooner And I think that leading up to the 2021 tournament in Tokyo would have been a better time to start bringing in the young guns. But again, the COVID pandemic, it just ruined all of that, because you probably would have done that in 2020. So that means 2021 is when you start bringing in the young girls. But now with the pandemic, you had to push that back, and you're going, well, I don't have time to find this new blood and really vet them. I have to go with the people that I know can perform. And unfortunately, Vlatko just couldn't get the team to play at the level they need to. And that's fair. Vlatko still has, underperforming. His teams are underperforming. That's fair.
Who, in your mind, is the hashtag Julie Ertz replacement?
No one.
Then what do you do when it comes to having someone like that? Who would be an individual that could be Julie Ertz-ish that could be a part of everything going forward?
I don't think it's a one person. I really don't. I think you do need to, I think the biggest switch that Vlatko needs to make is a dual pivot back there. So you could have Sullivan, but have someone like Coffey or Howell, maybe. Or you put Lindsey Horan at that second defensive midfield position and tell her to just hold, right? She can do the box to box stuff if she wants, but like her main job, you need to tell her, is like, your job is to stay back, win balls when you can, get the ball and turn upfield. That's her job, right? Sullivan can do more of the defensive work. Horan needs to do more of the ball progression work. And that's not taking away from what Horan's good at. She's very good at finding a pass, and she's allowed to get forward when that opportunity presents itself. But I think it's just about a structural issue of, instead of having two attacking midfielders, you have two defensive midfielders or two holding midfielders. That would help solve the Julie Ertz problem, because no one can do what Julie Ertz can do. No one. She's the best defensive midfielder to play the game, and maybe one of the best, like, period, men's or women's, but she's certainly the best to play for the U.S. women's national team in that position.
So then my next question for you is Vlatko.
Yeah.
Is he / should he be done regardless of result in Australia, New Zealand?
Oh yeah, I think that's a valid. Like, I'm always team. You don't get more than one cycle as a national team coach. That's my like. I'm getting concerned that Berhalter is talking about bringing guys in for January camp. I'm like, bro, what makes you think you're going to be around? Because I don't want. I got broed by a kid on the when I was refereeing a couple weeks ago, and I called him bro back, and he learned. But no, I think Vlatko needs to be done after 2023. I think that's because, one, there are women who could probably coach this team very well.
Who?
I think right now you're looking at Casey Stoney as probably the best option in that position. Obviously, everyone wants Laura Harvey. I'm not like super convinced she's the answer, but she does probably make her way to the national team coach soon. So those are two that I think are the big names that would make sense. Look, let's be real honest. This is the question of money, but could you go get Serena Vaigman? Because after 2023, who knows if I think England would be is the favorite going in right now. I think that's a pretty spot on bet. If you wanted to bet to look smart, England's probably your favorites for 2023.
Yeah.
Those are names that I would put out there. But again, I don't know if you could get Vaigman, and there's no proof that Casey Stoney or Laura Harvey are going to work at the national team level. To be quite frank, neither of them have, Laura Harvey's done good in NWSL. Casey's done well in NWSL now, and she had some success at Manchester City, but I don't think that either of them are like, oh, it has to be, because Vlatko also had success.
Yeah.
Like, that's the thing, is Vlatko is very successful in NWSL, and he's not able to translate that to the national team level. I think I don't know the exact reasons, but clearly there's some discrepancies there. But I think he has to be done. Hopefully you find someone coming up that can fill those shoes a little bit better. But I don't think the answer is fire Vlatko now. That said, if you lose to Germany on Sunday, actually, I'll say this. If you don't beat Germany Sunday, I think you're far enough out from a World Cup to make a change, personally.
But how wise is that?
Well, considering you have January friendlies, you'll probably have Shibboleth's Cup in that February window. You'll have April window, and then you'll have a couple friendlies leading up to the World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
I think if you think that this team is not going to win a World Cup under Vlatko, and your goal is to win the World Cup, then you have to make a change.
Yeah.
Right. If you don't think Vlatko can get you to the semifinals, I think is probably my metric. You got to make a change, because if you keep Vlatko just for the sake of continuity, when you'll have, let's see, December, 8 to 9 months.
Right.
I don't think that's an inadequate amount of time for a coach to evaluate the player pool and communicate their strategy. Right. I mean, Vlatko's had plenty of time to do this and clearly hasn't been able to get the results he needs against good teams, So, I mean, I don't think I don't think you want to fire Vlatko right now, but I think you're also far enough out where if you do, you have time. The new coach has time. You would have to have a replacement though ready to go, announced in December. Like, this isn't we'll have an interim coach in January for that camp. No, you need to have a replacement ready to go in December. So that's the question that Kate Markgraf has to ask herself, is does she have that person?
And I think that, legitimately, if you're going to chase after the names that you were looking at, that individual would have to be ready to jump. I don't think Casey Stoney would want to jump immediately.
No, I don't think so either.
Into a gig where she would be styling and profiling, and she would by far be, at the top of the ladder when it comes to GQ and styling, but getting ready to do those kinds of things. Yeah. I don't know if you want to jump that immediately. What else stuck out in your mind after last night? Were there any other issues that you had, or any other observations that you had in your hip pocket after last night?
Yeah, I think my biggest thing is that Alana Cook has had several moments in these big games, at least one, sometimes two moments in these big games, that she, for whatever reason, doesn't win her individual battle. And that is not good enough. You're a center back on the U.S. women's national team. Your job is to win those 1v1s. Last night, she got beat on that second goal badly. Not only did she get out-muscled, she got outpaced, she got outworked. There were issues that why did that pass be able to get made? Like, we can talk about that, but at the end of the day, you have to win that individual battle, and you were in a position to win it. She did it. She kind of had a bad moment against England. It was a little bit more unlucky than anything, but she goes to make a tackle for the ball and it doesn't work. And she wasn't great against Spain. That would be my concern. Naomi Girma, who's younger and has less time at the professional and international level, looks much more calm, cool, and collected, which good for her. I mean, she captains San Diego on occasion. She's going to be good. But yeah, Alana Cook is the one that I'm like, oof, we're missing Dahlkemper and Davidson right now, because those injuries to women who are World Cup veterans, but also still young enough to be relevant and still good, especially Davidson, who this was supposed to be her cycle to really take over. It's very apparent. And I like Alana Cook I think she can be a good center back, but she's proven to not be ready for the biggest challenges, which is concerning.
Okay. Before you go, because I know you have the real world that you have to pay attention to.
Yeah, it is a Friday.
And make sure that everything, well, even though it is a national holiday, make sure you get everything.
Yeah, I'm working today, unfortunately. Happy Veterans Day, but I have to work.
Yeah, and so you want a softball to get your opinion on the record before you go?
Sure.
Okay. Yesterday, and it's part of a larger picture. This is a Qatar-based question / statement / soapbox. Denmark has had a request denied to wear specific training shirts during the World Cup supporting human rights. The shirts would have featured the phrase "Menneskerettigheder for alle," which translates to human rights for all in English. That was my best, trying to do something quickly in Danish, Danish to English quickly. Ultimately, FIFA claimed it denied the team's request because of specific rules. Team director USWNT confirmed, received a message from FIFA that the training shirt we had thought the players should train in has been rejected for technical reasons, and we are sorry about that. Despite FIFA's reasoning for the denial, Jensen also added the team does not feel that the message is political. We are of the opinion that the message human rights for all is universal and is not a political call, but it should be something that all people can support, according to Jensen. Hummel previously announced they would produce World Cup jerseys that featured a subdued logo. Hummel stated that they wanted to make a monochromatic look to help make their logo less visible. Company previously proclaimed, we don't wish to be visible during a tournament that has cost thousands of people their lives. And if you haven't seen the E60 on that Jeremy Schaap has pieced together, that is your required viewing for the weekend. Hummel mentioned its goal of bringing people together as its aim for the World Cup as a tournament. Denmark, also one of the participating World Cup teams that will wear the One Love armband. Simon Schär will proudly don the armband throughout the competition. We've seen now the Danish have spoken out. I believe the Brits have spoken out on the issue. Greg Berhalter has spoken out on the issue. None of this really comes as a surprise.
Well, none of it should come as a surprise that teams and players are not happy with this tournament on the whole, right? I think the human rights part is the starting point of why we're disappointed and upset that this tournament is being hosted in Qatar. But then you look at the player side of things, where you're going from playing your club competition, literally people have games this week, to having to play a World Cup within 2 weeks from that. You're talking about playing a World Cup, in a bad part of your season, in a hot environment that is not really conducive to being outside.
But you'll be more than happy to do the qualifying matches in the heat of the summer there in those stadia.
Right.
I get it.
Yeah. So I think the players are I can imagine the players are very unhappy to have, they're happy to be able to play in a World Cup. Don't get me wrong, but just the logistical side of this tournament is a nightmare. Then you add the fact that you have thousands of people who have died while building these stadiums, and even more who were forced to work, not necessarily against their will. I think that we do need to understand that they did willingly go there to some extent. But
the kafala system and indentured servitude, basically. Yeah.
Right. But then you're talking about forced work once they get there, and harsh working conditions, and human rights violations of just not being able to freaking leave the country. It's Friday.
I know.
Those little, all those little things add up to the generic. The country doesn't allow you to bring in a pride flag, which FIFA, by the way, also thinks is political, which is another issue of it. So we had this issue 2 summers ago with Hungary.
Yeah.
FIFA needs to understand the role they play, because right now we're going through Russia was sports washing already. This is worse.
Yeah.
Because FIFA's basically saying, oh, you have to accept these things that put you in positions where you're not able to be the human you are just to play soccer or just to enter a country. And you chose this country on the most nefarious and immoral of reasons. It's not like, it would be one thing if FIFA had said, look, we're giving this to Qatar because we definitely want to, we want to go to a new part of the world, which is I'm not arguing that. I think that is a necessary thing that FIFA should do, right? But you have at no point stood up to the Qatari government and said, hey, this isn't cool. You need to allow this. They've just bent over backwards for Qatar, made every single concession for them, for a country that clearly doesn't respect half of the fan base that's going to come to its nation to watch this event. And probably even more when you consider all the other types of people who they don't believe should be able to exist at the basic level. And this tournament it sucks because we all want to be excited for a World Cup.
Mm-hmm.
It really sucks. But we're not even to get able to get the run up to the World Cup excitement because we have 2 weeks of I was watching Arsenal play Sunday.
Yeah.
You know,
and you're gonna watch it this weekend too.
Right. You know, it's hard because it's okay, I forgot that we even had a match yesterday, Wednesday, whatever, EFL Cup. And I was like, oh, we lost. Oh, okay. Because it's oh crap, I'm trying to think of what's World Cup, but also we're still playing soccer. It's
Yes.
that's not what the World Cup deserves either. And that's the thing, is you're tarnishing this tournament that so many people around the world love and look forward to, all because you wanted a little bit of money that you would have got in any other country in the world. Maybe not personally, you would not have got that money, but that's the problem. And the more that we see Sepp Blatter, who, by the way, dude, I'm glad your mea culpa is happening 2 weeks before the tournament, but
stop talking.
This is all your fault.
Yeah. Okay. So before you go, well, let's end on a fun note before you go. Not that one, Michael. We'll get to you to say yes. Yes. So FIFA is always going to do whatever they want to do to line their pockets. Yes, absolutely.
Exactly.
Yeah. So the fun note before you go, David needs your input. 3 girls I want to outfit in some USWNT shirt/jersey for the World Cup, and I don't want to load up on the standard Pulisic. Recommendations for 13, 9, and 1-year-olds. Martina's Barco, and she doesn't know fans for United.
So wait, you want USWNT player jerseys? Okay.
Yeah.
Well, you have 3 from Georgia, so that would be one route. You have Sean Johnson, Walker Zimmerman, Shaq Moore.
Yep. End of discussion right there. That's all.
Right there. I think a good one would always be Tim Weah. He's a fun, exciting player to watch. Brendan Aronson would be a fun one too, because that'll get some fun, and you can wear that throughout because he plays for a big team that you can watch week in and week out. Same with Tyler Adams. So Aronson Adams would be great suggestions because you can watch them on TV every weekend playing for Leeds, and you can wear your USMNT shirt for that. Let's see. I think those would be the 3 that I would suggest the most, because you're going to get a lot of Pulisic and Reyna.
Yeah.
You're going to get a lot of those. But maybe 4. I'll suggest the 4 of Tim Weah, because I like Tim Weah a lot. Aronson and Adams, because they're relevant. You're going to get to watch them a lot outside of the World Cup. And then the last one is Walker Zimmerman, center back, going to be starting most of the games. He's from Georgia. That's a good reason as well.
There you go. All right, time for the plug for everything going on. You've been very, very busy with soccer for US the other day.
Yeah, so got that out yesterday. We recorded the reaction to the roster episode and then put it out the next day. I was proud of myself for that turnaround.
Yeah.
I think that we'll have an episode coming out either next week or Sunday of next week to kind of preview the World Cup as a whole for the US, and then we'll have reaction episodes after every game. So follow the show on Twitter at Soccer for US Pod. And
the Forbidden Door will be open the next
month. And John's just going to give me the link to come in whenever I need.
Basically, yes.
It's it's going to be busy, but follow me on Twitter at Soccer for US Pod, and or follow me at Bartimus Prime 19 for all of that. So yeah,
there you go. See, this is what happens when we open the Forbidden Door, and it's all right. I need you to crash the party. So here's the golden ticket, and just crash. Go back to. I know you don't want to, considering it's a Friday.
It is a Friday,
but then tell you what. Get back to the real world so you're done with the real world sooner than you would be, and 35 minutes later than you would have been, considering that you jumped in here.
Yeah. I got a fun project today. I'm working on our company's holiday card, so that's fun.
Ah, okay. Have you fired Neil Brown yet at West Virginia?
I think he's here till the end of the season. But I don't think he should coach next season.
There you go. Contract not renewed.
Yeah.
Neil Brown.
He got an extension through, I want to say 2020. When did he get that? He got it in 2002. I want to say 2026 was his contract end date, maybe 25. So that's kind of the problem is like if you fire him now in 2022, you're looking at a much bigger buyout. And I'm wondering if we wait until 2023, January 1, 2023 to be like, hey, Neil, you're done. Contract.
Neil Brown buyout.
We're into college football. Yeah.
That's over on OSG Sports. That's the other side.
2-year contract. Yeah, through the 2026 season. So that's the issue we're facing right now. And the problem is that our athletic director gave him that extension after not really earning it. He had 2 6-win seasons and somehow thought that was worthwhile. And I'm of the opinion that making a bowl game, I do think making a bowl game is like the bare minimum for a college football coach. You shouldn't lose your job if you make a bowl game.
Yes.
But that hitting the bare minimum every single year, especially following a coach who I know a lot of people didn't like because he was a little rough around the edges, but had multiple 10-win seasons and, averaged 7.3 wins a season and put a lot of guys in the NFL during his tenure at WVU. Neil Brown's not doing anything close to that. You can talk to me about recruiting all you want, but it's not getting the job done. Maybe we'll just hire Brian Harsin. I hear Auburn doesn't like him.
Yeah, he's out there. Well, just he needs to go back west of the Mississippi and actually, recruit. See, you need a coach that actually will physically go out and recruit.
Yeah, and that was why Dana got fired, basically, is because I think he and Shane didn't see eye to eye, which fine. Shane wanted a guy who was a little bit more like, a family values, because apparently that's how you win football games. Ask Nick Saban about his family values. And
Miss Terry will have him coaching as long as she wants him to coach.
Miss Terry runs that family. We all know this.
Yes.
Monongah, West Virginia native, by the way. Always got to throw that out there. Dana that was his problem, is he didn't like to go out and recruit. But people wanted to come to WVU because they knew he could play for a coach that's going to make them look good. He got quarterbacks. He didn't recruit them out of high school. He got transfers. But sometimes that's the name of the game now. So
why? Yes,
I don't know. I mean, Neil Brown hasn't had a recruited quarterback start for him yet, but apparently no one wants to dog him for that. That's I was a Dana fan. I think that's where my biggest thing about Neil is I liked Dana. I got drunk with him a few times. That's a dangerous venture. I went out drinking with Dana once and Huggy once.
You and Thuggy Bear?
Yeah.
Wow.
I didn't stay. I did not last too long. That man is. Yeah. Anyway.
Wow. I figured Dana would be vodka and Red Bull.
Yes. Yeah. Well, he's definitely vodka. I don't think it was Red Bull, but Huggy is vodka too. Huggy's straight vodka.
Wow.
Dana does vodka, Red Bull, or vodka drinks, but yeah, Dana's less problematic with his alcohol than Huggy.
Wow.
Huggy just sits there and drinks. Dana will, at least talk to people.
I figured Dana will be quite boisterous. That he'll be the life of the party. And
Dana's fun. Dana's fun.
And
Huggy's fun too, but in different ways.
I bet. I always picture Bob Huggins as the guy that if you ask an intelligent question to him, he will give you an intelligent answer. But if you ask a dumb question to him, he will sit there and basically laugh it off.
100%. That's Huggy. He especially in the real world when he doesn't have to answer those questions. Yeah. It was funny because I used to. So when I was at WVU for grad school, one of my jobs there was to tutor student athletes. I was my grad assistantship through the journalism school. Okay. And so I touched a lot of Huggy's players because a lot of the basketball guys, basically their degrees were either journalism or communications, and that's what I tutored them in. I actually I tutored a lot of kids in a lot of things. I had 4 of his kids in a philosophy class that I tutored them in. That was fun. It's great. Listen, it's fun. We talked about Kant. We talked about Plato. We talked about, Aristotle. We talked about Aquinas. It was they didn't get it. I enjoyed it.
Emmanuel Kant and Morgantown, two things that you don't necessarily think we're going to.
Hey, you know, there are absolute truths, and one of those is that Morgantown always wins. So, you know, but no, his kids at that point in time, he was going through that transition. I had him during that year where he had a lot of guys come in that turned out to not be very good kids, and he got rid of a lot of them. So the next year he come in and it's like this whole brand new slate of guys. But no, I mean, I like Huggy a lot. He cares a lot about his players, and he cares a lot about the program. And I have very few things to say about Bob Huggins. He can't draw up a play out of a timeout, but he cares a lot about his players.
And just is the perpetually crotchety old man.
Yeah, it's great. He's fun.
So now that we've filibustered,
we've done. Yeah.
Well, but no, it's like we can talk college football down here. Like I said, that's on the OSG sports side of things. That happens every Sunday afternoon at 2.
Yeah,
that's when we tape that show.
Yeah,
get out of here because you know the forbidden door is always open. Bart Keeler,
yes.
Great to see you on a Friday when we didn't originally plan it.
Hey, you know what? Enjoy the high school football tonight. Hopefully the rain stops. So
I'm indoors, baby. It don't matter.
Well, hopefully that stops so that kids can play and have fun. But yeah, enjoy that. Yeah. Y'all have a great one.
All right, be good, Bart Keeler. And Bart is done, and he's out the door. So there you go. So, all right. Once again, thanks to all of y'all for putting up with our shenanigans on a Friday. Let's get into news, gossip, rumor, and innuendo before we go. Then we will do stuff again on Monday. We'll talk about things. That's the official term. Dortmund confident of keeping Jude Bellingham. That's from our friends at 90 Minutes. PSG interested in Atletico Madrid's Joao Felix. Could try to sign him on loan in January. That's from our friends at Le Parisien. Southampton will pay championship side Luton Town more than £4 million in compensation for signing Nathan Jones, who replaced the sacked Ralph Hasenhüttl yesterday. Villa targeting an A-list forward in the January window, while Villarreal's Spain defender Pau Torres, also of interest to recently appointed manager Unai Emery. Roma turning their attention to Barca's right back Hector Bellerin, with Portugal's Diogo Dalot now a part of Manchester United's plans. Barca could allow Netherlands forward Memphis Depay to leave in the January transfer window. Tell me if you've heard that one before. Newcastle want Pau Torres. Atletico Madrid's Yannick Carrasco, and Real Betis Nabil Fekir this summer. That's from our friends at Fichajes. Arsenal have made a bid for Shakhtar Donetsk Mikhailo Mudryk. Juve is also in the running. Bayern Munich French defender Benjamin Pavard open to playing in a different country next season, linked with Chelsea during that past summer transfer window. West Ham Crystal Palace QPR interested in Middlesbrough's 18-year-old English Academy midfielder Farrell Willis. Tottenham is going to prioritize a right-sided wingback and a backup striker in January. That's from our friends at 90 Minutes. Senegal will use witch doctors in an attempt to help Bayern Munich's Sadio Mane recover from his injury in time for the World Cup. That's from the four-letter paper. Take that story at your own risk. Bayern Munich's Alphonso Davies believes he'll be fit for the World Cup after suffering a hamstring strain against Hertha Berlin last Saturday. Once again, that's from the four-letter paper, so take the information at your own risk. Dominic Calvert-Lewin will see a specialist to find out the extent of his dislocated shoulder issue. That's from our friends at The Guardian. Piqué will run for the Barcelona presidency as he focuses on his business ventures following his retirement as a player this past week. That is from ESPN. Now, from our friends at Sky, we'll dig into any and all news that is there. Yesterday in the Gummy Bear Cup, Man U beat Aston Villa by the score of 4-2. No De Gea or Thiago in the Spain squad. That was announced this morning. Luis Enrique did not have David De Gea as a part of it. Keepers, Unai Simon, Robert Sanchez, David Raya. Defenders, Azpilicueta, Danny Carvajal, Eric Garcia, Guillamon, Torres, Laporte, Jordi Alba, Jose Gaya from Valencia. Midfielders, Busquets, Rodri, Gavi, Soler, Llorente, Pedri, and Koke. Forwards, Ferran Torres, Nico Williams, Yeremy Pino, Morata, Asensio, Sarabia, Dani Olmo, and Ansu Fati. According to Graham Potter, Ruben Loftus-Cheek, and Trevor Chalobah, disappointed by not making the final English roster. Reece James thought he was close and thought it would be close, did everything he could. This is Graham Potter from their morning press conference. Did everything he could to give himself a chance, but in the end fell a little short. And Ben Chilwell also admitted because of injury. Conor Gallagher will have a really positive experience at the World Cup, according to Graham Potter. Just nice for Conor, fantastic for us, great for him. He's going to have a real positive experience, delighted for him. He's worked really hard. He's a fantastic person, fantastic honor, nice story. He's been out on loan, come through the club, now gets a chance to play at the World Cup. Let's see. Netherlands head coach Louis van Gaal included injured Barca forward Memphis Depay and uncapped teenager Xavi Simon in his 26-man squad, but left out Jasper Cillessen. Depay hasn't played since the Nations League match on September 22nd against Poland. Played less than 150 minutes so far for Barca this season. Van Gaal already said his top scorer would be of a certain place as long as there was a chance of him playing during the tournament. Simone's has made a strong impression since his move from PSG to PSV Eindhoven, 8 goals in 13 league matches. Surprise in goal was leaving out Cillessen, who rejoined his old club NEC Nijmegen from Valencia this summer in the hopes of reviving his international career. Bayern is not happy as they have included Mane in the World Cup squad. Suffered the ankle problem, as we said, against Werder Bremen. Was set to miss out on the tournament, but reports emerged the forward would be a part of the squad. Bild claiming Bayern are not happy. Senegal have now confirmed Mane's in the traveling party, as well as Edouard Mendy, Koulibaly, and Ismaila Sarr. Uruguayan squad came out overnight. Barca defender Ronaldo Araujo has won his place. Luis Suarez, Edinson Cavani, both 35. They're also on the list for their 4th World Cup. Darwin Nunez, also on the plane. Facundo Pellistri, Manchester United, who hasn't played a single minute of football this season under Erik ten Hag, made the cut. Betancourt is a part of Diego Alonso's midfield along with Valverde, and they are in Group H with Portugal, South Korea, and Ghana. Keepers, Muslera, Rocher, Sebastian Sosa. Defenders, Araujo, Martin Caceres from LA Galaxy. Coates from Sporting Lisbon, Jose Jimenez from Atletico Madrid, Diego Godin from Vélez Sarsfield, Oliveira Rodriguez, Guillermo Varela from Flamengo, Matias Vina from Roma. We mentioned Betancourt. You also have Nicolas de la Cruz, Pellistri, Lucas Torreira, who's at Galatasaray, Ugarte, Valverde, Vecino. Forwards, we mentioned Suarez, Nunez, and Cavani. You've also got Maxi Gomez, Canobio from Atletico Paranaense, Georgian de Arrasqueta from Flamengo, and Facundo Torres from Orlando City. So that's a big one there. Big news for Orlando City. We mentioned the Denmark news, and that's where we are with all of the information. Let's go into MLS. There were a couple of transactions that have that happened in the overnight. And once again, keep an eye on the expansion draft for St. Louis City. That is tonight at 7 o'clock. So keep an eye on that. You can watch the expansion draft. Tommy Scoops came out with his list, Tom Bogert, for the best players available in the expansion draft. You have, and this is his list, Alejandro Bedoya, Dax McCarty, Tyler Miller from Minnesota United. But once again, you've got Roman Berkey, who's already in net for St. Louis City. Alex Muil from Nashville. Will Trapp from Minnesota. Tim Parker from the Houston Dynamo. Nick Dupuis from LA Galaxy. Shinyashiki from Charlotte. Guzman Corujo from Charlotte. Unwanted DPs could be Patrick Klamala, Gustavo Bo, Ake Loba. Out of contract DPs, Alejandro Pozuelo, who is status we're trying to figure out. Is he going to go back to IMFC or is he going to put himself out on the market? Younger players, you've got Joaquini from Orlando City, Lucas Esteves from Colorado, Jackson Reagan from Seattle, Nosita from Red Bulls. And we've talked about Nosita in the past being 6'8". And so the 5 that Bogert has in his list for St. Louis City: Bedoya, Muil, Shinyashiki, Reagan, Klamala. So that's the list. So 7 o'clock tonight, your expansion draft involving St. Louis City SC. Let's see. What other notes do we have here? Austin has extended John Gallagher's contract. DC United have acquired Derek Williams in a trade with LA Galaxy. Junior Urso, this one was big news. Junior Urso leaves Orlando City due to personal reasons, and that's the quotation marks. Due to personal reasons, effective immediately, Urso is returning to his native Brazil. So a big loss for Orlando City involving Junior Urso heading back to his home country. And then Fafa Pico is acquired by Nashville in a trade with Houston Dynamo. So we'll keep an eye on that stuff as well. That's your news in and around Major League Soccer. Let's get you into viewing habits for today. What's on your mind? It's probably a lot of college stuff as you're getting closer to figuring out who's going to make the postseason tournaments. BN and BNN Espanyol have a Turkish Super League triple header noon. They have it at noon because I was looking at what's going on, and I saw a noon and a 1 and a 3. Thought it was a triple header. Nope, just the one match at noon involving Trabzonspor. Ligue 1 is at 3 o'clock on BN and Espanyol, Lyon, and Nice. ESPN Plus. The Jupiler League in Belgium at 2:40, Bundesliga 2:20, Borussia Mönchengladbach and Dortmund, Bundesliga B at 12:25, Holstein Kiel and Hanover, Eredivisie at 2:55, English League Championship at 3:55, Birmingham City and Sunderland, College Men, it is Columbia and Cornell is at 7 o'clock. Serie B on Fox Soccer Plus at 2:30, Ascoli and Frosinone. Paramount Plus has Serie A at 2:45, Empoli and Cremonese. Saturday, it's a lot. Saturday, you got a lot to look at, but it is French Ligue 1, 11 and 3, Super League in Turkey at 9 and noon on BN. Fox Soccer Plus has Serie B at 8 and 10:15. NBC, Newcastle and Chelsea at 12:30. USA has a triple header, 7:30, Manchester City, Brentford, Liverpool, Southampton at 10, Wolves and Arsenal at 2:45. Being an Espanyol has your simulcast of Liga and Super League. Gold TV has Portuguese Primera, 1 and 3:30. They have the Peruvian League, Alianza Lima and Melgar at 8 o'clock, and the Copa Uruguay with Defensor and La Luz with a TBA time. You can catch Gold TV if you don't have it through your normal subscriptions on Fanatis, fntz.co/soccer down here, and you can keep up with everything going on in Central and South America. They've got BN. They have all the BN networks and all that kind of stuff. I'm hooked. I blame Jason. Universo has your quadruple header, 7:30, 10, 12:30, and 2:45. ESPN Plus has the Bundesliga all day, Copa del Rey all day, Hull City and Reading at 9:55, Eredivisie at 1:40 and 3:55. Paramount Plus has a triple header in Serie A, and Peacock has the 4 matches at 10 o'clock and the one at 12:30. So that gets you through your Saturday. Today, with what's going on, quickly, and it'll be juice boxes, and then that should do it unless there's anything else. We'll put David's question up on the floor before we go. Right now, like I said, it is Eastern Europe, Middle East, North Africa. That's going to carry you through the noon hour. We've mentioned what's going on in the Turkish Super League, lower division stuff in Eastern Europe, a couple of international friendlies for women. Switzerland and Denmark. Denmark is a favorite at a plus 119, both, and that's at 1 o'clock. Brazil and Canada. Brazil is a big favorite at a minus 141 at 115. National leagues and lower leagues, once again, all through the schedule in the early afternoon. More women's friendlies at 2 o'clock. England, a big favorite against Japan at a minus 169. Netherlands, a huge favorite against Costa Rica. Spain, a huge favorite against Argentina. We mentioned the Serie B action in the 2 o'clock hour. Empoli, a slight favorite at home against Cremonese at 2:45. You've got in the championship, Birmingham City is a plus 127 at home as Sunderland comes to visit. Lyon at 3 o'clock is a favorite against Nice at a minus 128. International friendly, France on the road is a minus 256 going up against Norway. Also on the board, getting you into the evening hours. More international women's friendlies, 8 o'clock. It is Ecuador and Peru. Ecuador is a favorite on the road at a plus 108. South Korea is a favorite on the road at a plus 114 going up against New Zealand. Liga MX Femenil at 9 o'clock. Tigres, a plus 131 at Club America. And your Australia-Sweden international friendly on the women's side at 10:45. Sweden's a plus 114. Australia is a plus 204. Last thing on, yeah, we're getting there, Alex. David, Twitch pitch. If he is supplementing his soccer pods over the World Cup to add to SDH, he wants suggestions. Balance, not complaining. Scuffed is the only other thing I listen to. I would probably plug into what Bart is doing with the Soccer for US pod, just so you can get a US perspective. I don't necessarily think there's going to be a whole lot of complaining, but you will get a lot of notice from Bart and his rosters to what's going on with the US side. So Soccer for US pod would be one that I would recommend as a part of the family here at SDH. And then just see if there's any of the personality. Oh, cool. There you go, David. Excellent. So that's a good question. So Twitch pitch, you have been warned. And David, what I would do is I would, for the audience that doesn't get this particular episode, bring that back up. Put this in like a cut and paste document over off to the side and keep asking this question as we get closer and closer to the World Cup. So that way we could help you out there. And so, Alex. All right, Mr. Newcastle fan. Still waiting for Jason to whisper, okay, that was actually amazing. Miguel Almiron, player of the month for the past month in the Premier League. No, that's what we're here for, David. So Miguel Almiron, player of the month for the Premier League for last month. Gee, it's amazing what happens when you have a manager who knows what to do with Miguel Almiron. Sorry, Steve Bruce. Alex, you're doing well. You're in the international places, and it's amazing what happens when you're allowed to invest, when you spend money, and you have an owner, despite it being the PIF, when you have an owner that wants to invest and brings in talent across the board, your defense at the back, when you've got Fabian Scher, that's a part of the discussion at the back, Miguel Almiron allowed to be Miggy, not a surprise. But how much of it is, I will play devil's advocate here since I'm not a Newcastle person. How much of it is the money you were allowed to invest, and how much of it is Eddie Howe? Yeah, yes, yeah. Basically, yeah. When this happens, I'd like you to go here. Yeah, Eddie Howe greater than Steve Bruce. And so you've got owners that are investing, and I think you're going to invest. I think another 70. That they have invested another 70 into infrastructure. Not a surprise. But as Jason has said, this was your sleeping giant. This was the one that when you tap them on the shoulder, you sit there and you go, we think that you really could be something if you had somebody that would invest. You're having that right now. And the expectations will continue to increase. And I just wonder how much patience they'll have with Eddie Howe after. If you get into European football, then what happens? Where's the expectation level for Eddie Howe, and then the level of investment, then the expectation and the level of investment, and that cycle that'll start to happen probably sooner rather than later. But no, I mean, Callum Wilson doing well up top. I know that he's dinged up currently, but yeah, and I will say, let me see, I got to check this too before we go. How many? And this is Alex. This is just for you. How many players of Newcastle's do I have on my fantasy team? Kieran Trippier, Fabian Scher, Miguel Almiron, and you're only allowed 3. So I've got Trippier, Fabian Scher, and Miguel Almiron. Miguel Almiron, by the way, massively, incredibly inexpensive pickup. He fit my cap league amazingly when he started to get hot. And so I've got Miggy. I've had Miggy for quite some time on my roster when it comes to my fantasy team. So, so Scher, Trippier was a great pickup. And Miguel Almiron, who's allowed to do Miggy things. So that's, you're right there with it. All right. So that is the show for another week. Once again, thanks to everybody for hanging out as much as you guys do and being a part of it. Thanks to Michael Parkhurst. Thanks to Bart Keeler. And thanks to Jarrett Smith. And we'll be back at it again on Monday. We're that much closer. We're on the flip side of the schedules, the domestic schedules around the world. We're that much closer to the World Cup. And we'll have folks talking about it. And if you missed a lot of stuff on the network this week, great conversations with Marco Micheletto and Coleman Gannon up in Columbus with what they've been able to do with Columbus Crew 2. Got to catch up with Marco about his former club, South Georgia Tormenta. We have Tormenta conversations that were posted after they won the USL League One title. after we got to spend time earlier in the week in Statesboro to see them knock off the Chattanooga Red Wolves. Red Wolves, by the way, have parted ways with Jimmy Obleda, their coach. He will not return for the 2023 season. Coach Weekly, his assistant, took them to the last game of the year. And, great work done by him and the staff and the guys to focus on what was going on in front of them. They got the big win on the road in Richmond, made it to the last game of the year before losing to South Georgia Torment. Great year for the Chattanooga Red Wolves. And all the other programming that we have. So let me check here. Prim and Proper is up, where we caught you up on last week. Stephen Short, if you want to find out what's going on with Lexington Pro Soccer, that is up on the network as well. You've got, and Thursdays with Nico. That's the last thing. Thursdays with Nico is going to be at 1 o'clock on the network. So 1 o'clock, Thursdays with Nico on a Friday, and we'll go through everything from MLS Cup to anything else on his mind for a half an hour, 1 o'clock to 1:30. We'll be right here. So for everybody here at SDH, for Nick, for Jarrett, for Jason, I'm just John. Play it safe, everybody. Enjoy your weekend. Be safe, lest we forget. And so since it is the end of the show, mucha plata, y'all, and that means that I get to do this. We'll be back at it before you know it. We'll be back here on your Monday. Play it safe. We'll see you next time.